Good morning, good morning, good morning to all of you. Hey, let's get those spirits up. We're starting this week, and we are going to try to talk about three topics. Well, the first one it's coronavirus, the information that we've got in order to start the week. Well, we are going to be informed by the ones that are taking care of all the health care strategy. We also are going to have the report regarding of who's who in fuel prices. And the third topic that we are going to deal with it's the advancement on public works, what we have been doing in terms of building of the refinery and in the building of the new airport, the new military airport, Felipe Angeles, both civil and military airport, Felipe Angeles. So, if you agree with me, well, we are going to first. No, you know what? No, yeah, because sometimes it's going to take us a little bit more time. No, we're gonna take that order. We're going to start with coronavirus, then we're gonna deal about who's who in fuel prices, and then advancement on public works. So let's start with Hugo, so he can provide us with his report. Thank you, Mr. President, Secretary, and Attorney General. Good morning to all of you. So, well, I will be quite punctual, and we are reporting on this every day at 7 p.m. So, you have the real time version on what's going on in terms of the worldwide situation of coronavirus. The epidemic it's active in the European country. In Asia, it's on a clear ending point. They still have cases, but the daily case number it's underneath what they had originally. It's less than 1% of the worldwide cases. Most of the cases currently are on Western Europe. We've said that the count cases every day should not lead us to think that this is an accrued number, because this illness lasts for around 14 days and it solves spontaneously in most of individuals. So in this count case that is on your left hand side of this slide, that's 153,000, and most of them are already cured. And these are great news, and this is happening in every country because people that are suffering the disease, besides being cured and reestablished, they cannot get infected once again, and this is what will extinguish this epidemic. On the next slide, well, in Mexico, we have up until yesterday afternoon, we had 53 cases confirmed, and the same thing goes for this 53 confirmed cases. Well, these are active cases. These are seven active cases that are in the hospital, most of them on stable conditions, and the rest of them are ending their isolation prevention period. Some of them are actually over, more than 12 are over, and they have recovered and they are cured. Next slide, please. On this chart that we are going to remove it ever since today in the afternoon, because the only purpose of this chart is to show how as more cases appear, well, this becomes much more complex. It's much more complex to follow up on every contact, and this is the only reason why, according to the plan, it really surpasses the concentration measures focused on the cases, and we start to instrument them. We start to use community mitigation measures, where we try to keep away susceptible people with infected person. This is not a sudden change. We will continue to start identifying suspect cases and contact cases, but progressively this is going to be less useful as the other measures are much more, the other collective measures are much more efficient. So we have announced the healthy distance measures. We have grouped them up in a same package in order to show what's the purpose. And the purpose is for people not not to be in close contact amongst them, because if this happens individually, then it is a very manageable situation. But if it happens massively, then it may contribute to the propagation of the disease. And these are some measures, and this has raised certain concerns on the media in terms of what's the urgency sense if we need to do this from 1 minute to another or overnight. And this is rather more pertaining to the idea that it's not based on science. It's always desirable to start to have interventions, but we should do them when they are more useful and when they would cause less alterations towards society. As we've said before, our main concern is that in economical terms, in social terms, well, whoever has a higher vulnerability, well, it is those people that are poor, people that do not have access to different resources, and they live day in, day out from their wages, from their small commercial activities. And those are the peoples that we always need to keep in mind. We should not, or they should not be affected or have an impact due to any health, public health care interventions. And even though international media showcase what's going on in different countries, and Italy is one of the most prominent examples where we try in those examples to have this massive closings all throughout the country. Well, this has very serious consequences in the economy of those that are less favored economic wise. In Mexico, we do know that half of the population lives in poverty situation, and as a result of political or economical politics of the previous administrations. And this is the population that we need to take care of. And this is not taken the health care measures as necessary. We should also keep in mind that we have repeated in several times before that Mexico came into the epidemic about a month after the US and the European cases. Our first case was detected at the end of February, and in the US it was in the end of January. And this has given us an advantage because we can have our prep plan that we had ever since the beginning of the year in the most adequate moment, technically speaking, for interventions. And I'll just wrap it up by saying that these are the healthy measures. We have the general hygiene. We should cover our sneezes for us not to propagate our viruses. And this is interpreter. I certainly apologize. There seems to be a technical problem. This is for the public sector. This is non-active activities. Those are the ones that can be postponed without affecting the purpose or the mission of the different organizations, governmental or private or public activities. And that it's better to focus on the one in order to execute these actions. People need to mobilize or need to work as a group. So if there's an office activity, that's an example that can be done from home. Well, they should be done from home for the necessary time so that we gather together even less. The third measure is rescheduling of public events, even if they are private or public. And what interests us here is for massive congregations, and those are over 5,000 people. They should be able to be rescheduled, and they should be done later down the year. One of the examples that we have been using is the Feria de San Marcos in Aguascalientes, because, well, the governor properly found a way to postpone them to a better time. And the crucial point, well, elderly citizens, as they grow older, well, they increase the complication risk, right? So all of us should care for the elderly, and this implies a social responsibility. This doesn't come from the government to the society, but it's rather an action that the whole society to take care as a whole, and we should take care of them. And if there are people within the family that in the last few weeks they have had symptoms, fever, cough, headaches, or sneezing or a running nose, well, they should not visit this elder individual. But we also need to be on the lookout, and we should be able to take care, and we should have phone contact with the elderly in order to address any need that they might have. Because in the measure that they can support themselves on their community, on their families, well, it might be that they do not need to move from one place to another, and thus they are less exposed to infection. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Who's who on fuel prices in gas? And regular gas, well, the highest price is found in a station called Gavino Gavida Estrada in Churubuco, Michoacan, with a price to the public of 22.10 pesos per liter and a margin of 3.57 pesos, a earning margin, which is pretty high. In Costco gas in Centro Tabasco, the price to the public it's 17.56 of the price of regular gas with a margin of 26 cents. This is the highest and lowest. In premium gas, BP estaciones here in Mexico City in Benito Juarez, they have a public price of 23.29. This is the highest price with the highest margin of 5.2 pesos, and the most economical one with a margin of 88 cents in Veracruz, a public price of 17 pesos with 57 cents on behalf of Proveedora de Combustibles and Lubricantes 3D. That is missing a T on the slide. The Gasolinera Condesa, the highest price for diesel in San Martin de Bolaños, Jalisco, and that's 22.89 cents per liter, and a margin of 3.85 pesos for diesel. The most cheap one is Servicio El Coyol in Veracruz, 18 pesos with 42 cents per liter. They have a margin of 87 cents. Now, you can start to see a great difference between the cheapest and the most expensive one. Why? Because a few are not showing the drop in oil prices, and Pemex is already given that. If you verify Pemex prices in any distribution center or supply center for different areas, and if they're called Sutar by Pemex, the price has dropped, and it has dropped because the oil price dropped worldwide by around 30% in average. So the cheaper the oil, the cheaper the gas, and that gas should be sold cheaper, and that should be done by everyone. But they have not done that. These are numbers from 5th of March to 11th of March. So perhaps some of them have not start selling at these prices, and I hope that they do so today, they do so tomorrow, and that there are no gas stations that want to take advantage of this and that they want to pocket the difference from the oil prices to what we're selling, because the oil prices dropped a lot and it should reflect on the prices, because generally speaking it's showing what the Mr. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador stated before. If there was a drop on raw materials, there will be a drop on the gas prices. And if we see this per brands, Chevron, Arco, and Redco, they have the highest prices in average, while the cheapest one have Total, Gulf, and Orson. And the gas is not on the chart right now. I hope that it goes to the chart again, but those are the cheapest one. Now we are going to talk about the topic of verification on gas stations. We have verified 192, and we also visited. It was a mixture of visits and 7 verifications, 253 complaints that were addressed on our app liter by liter that has over 140,000 downloads. And there was a gas station that did not allow us to place our verification stickers. They are going to undergo a special kind of verification in a few gas stations. We found a difference from liter to liter, even though, well, we were not able to find any tricks this week. We found 18. We immobilized 18 pumps because they were not giving complete liters, and the one that did not allow any verification, well, it was in Tepic, Nayarit. You should avoid this gas station, Integradora de la Sección Huichol, on the street Santiago de Pochotitlan. And, well, we are going to visit them over again, but now with our public forces. So if you look at the app, the most cheap or the cheapest regular gas is in Pachuca Hidalgo at 16.32 cents, and this is what we look at because that's a price where we should purchase our gas. And you can use our app liter by liter. You can download it for free both in iOS and Android, and the most expensive one is 21.92 in Telpa de Allende, Jalisco. They are taking advantage of this premium. The most economical one, 16.12 pesos in Veracruz, and the most expensive one, and that's in Alvaro Obregón. See the difference? This is in Mexico City. They say that it's due to additives. Well, this should be for spaceships, I guess, due to the price that they're giving it as a difference. This, or the most economical one, it's 17.55 cents, and in Veracruz, the most expensive one is 22.66 cents in Chavinda, Michoacan. And we continue to monitor other services that are of high interest towards consumers. And I would like to just give general advice, not because the gas is cheaper we should use up more, because if we burn up gas then it creates pollution. We should be reasonable consumers. We should use reason. We should not purchase what we don't need, and let's not purchase what we cannot pay. We can pay for it because it's cheaper now, but we should be responsible consumers also towards the environment. We should turn off the lights that we are not using in order to save electric power. Let's use gas as less as possible because that's being a responsible consumer. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we are going to talk about the advancement of public works. It is Friday, March 13th, and we are going to give the report of this week. We are building dwells massively ever since last week. We filled out everything, even down to the last platform. ICA floor, packet 1. We have casted all the plans for the coke plant and the combined or mixed plant. 9 drilling equipment on site. We have supplied 1,200 tons of reinforcing iron. We are, according to schedule, we are assembling our dwells, our wells. We have performed the loading test with 550 tons in the hydro treating plant of diesel. This is the warehouse area, and we have an advancement on dynamic compactation of 85%. This is a storing area, 120,000 square meters, 50 trucks working on this area. This is the combined plant or mixed plant. Cooling tower, substation E. We are developing jobs according to the provisional roads for the construction stage. These are the advancements of the International Airport Felipe Angeles on March 16th, 2020, regarding the north landing strip, the central platform. Well, we have cast in concrete and concrete MR51, which would be the surface, and the control tower. We are building this and placing the foundations in order to place the last foundations, and also in the parking, and the we are performing digging works whenever the suburban train will come in the passenger terminal. We are installing 136 seismic isolators that will make this building one of the biggest buildings in the American continent, with prevention towards earthquakes. In the hydraulic grids, well, we are casting the first tank on the first drinkable water, and in order to get passengers, well, we started the construction of the foundation with an advancement of 61 casted platforms, and we are also in housing. We have been working on masonry in power grid, voice grid, and data. We are digging in order to place substations in the military area base number one. We are placing platforms for the different facilities, and we are placing the hydraulic base on the landing strip and the military platform. So far, we have generated 13,857 civilian jobs, and we are at 735 days from opening day. Okay, so we would open this to a Q&A. Thank you. Good morning, Presidente. Well, I would like to ask you about coronavirus. Well, if you're not traveling abroad, well, you do have contact with the heads of other countries, businessmen, and also sports people that travel around the world. So, just as the minister was saying, well, the low poverty areas are the most vulnerable, and in your tours, you go to this kind of population. So, would you be willing to perform a diagnosis test for COVID 19? And would you not go to? That's the first question. Would you not? Well, I would adjust myself to the protocol, the health protocol. But your question is great, because if needed, then I would do the test myself, the coronavirus test, and I will do as doctors tell me. We made the decision of leaving this matter, this public health matter, on the hands of scientists, physicians, and technicians, because if it's left on the hands of politics, then and the so-called politics, those are the worst. Well, then we will alter everything. That'll be another epidemic, and that has to do with the interests that have been created to those people that don't look at us with good eyes, and take advantage of everything to blame it upon us. I'm going to tell you something that happened yesterday night, so that you can have an idea on what's going on. And I'm going to tell you this with the purpose of place trustworthiness to physicians, and we should not turn this matter into a political issue. I was in the coast of Guerrero, and I then traveled to Mexico City. I took a flight in the Volaris airline. And this is interpreter. I certainly apologize. We're having technical difficulties. Well, I had a message from Lopez Doriga. He's a reporter, and he was announcing the first death due to coronavirus. That was not all. I step out of the plane, and there's a lot of reporters there, but more than reporters, they were uh, cameragraphers, and they were harassing me so I could make a statement regarding the first death regarding coronavirus, if I was not going to send my condolences to family members. And well, they were harassing me all the way to the car, and I told them tomorrow morning I'll make the statement. We can talk tomorrow morning. So fortunately, this person did not pass away, and I truly wish him well, as I wish to all Mexicans, as I wish all Mexicans not to suffer. I wish every Mexican to tackle any kind of adversity, but this environment does not help. I know that you're angry, and I know that the people that used to feel like the owners of Mexico, they're angry. They're angry due to the changes and the transformations, and I completely understand that. How wouldn't they be angry if they cannot steal anymore? How are they not going to be angry if they did not pay any taxes, or all their taxes were returned to them? They kept billions of pesos. They pocketed that. Also, the owners of media, the media owners are angry. Not all of them. I cannot generalize this. Why? Because they were receiving a lot of money for publicity. They are angry. A lot of writers are angry because they also received money. Many journalists did. They were being paid out. They were being paid off. So imagine how many years receiving millions upon millions of pesos, and then all of a sudden, then that came to an end. But well, they should understand that, well, that couldn't be sustained. We couldn't follow down that road. Corruption couldn't be king anymore. We needed to have a transformation. And thus, this is a calling in order to set aside these differences, these political differences, and not to get what has to do with general interests all mixed up. In this case, people's health. We shouldn't be like vultures, right? We should be ethical. We should act responsibly. And this is why I wanted to ask you, if it's due to prevention, when would you take this diagnosis test, this screening? Well, is it necessary for me to run this test? No, no, but I mean, why don't you come up and explain this, right? Because you just said no. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, this idea of everybody should take a screening test, and if you're talking about Mr. President, well, this comes from a vision that is completely out of place science wise. This is not the first time that we state this. Every night for the last 7 days, we have been discussing this. Why? Because notoriously, about 10 days ago, and this started ever since the United States announced the increase of the restriction measures, this idea grew. And they thought, well, everybody needs to have a screening test. And it came into the area that lacks of technical sense because Mexico has very few cases because we do not run tests. Well, it doesn't work like that. This is not how epidemic vigilance works and healthcare works. What we have explained day in day out is that this test, it's not a clinical test. Someone that has symptoms, someone that has this disease, well, it's not useful to know if they're positive or negative. Why? Because the medical care of someone with coronavirus COVID, the disease that it's caused by coronavirus, well, it's exactly the same if they have the virus or not. Because all over the world and along the epidemic, we won't have a specific treatment for it, a medication that would tackle this virus, that would eradicate it. Why? Because this disease, like the enormous amount of respiratory infection diseases that are caused by viruses, they heal on their own. The immune system on the body generates antibodies that are molecules and proteins that fight the virus and eradicate the virus on their own. And this is the reason why the most amount of people, well, they recover spontaneously. And even more out of the blue, it's thinking that we should run the test, any of us or Mr. President. There's no scientific logic to it. So it's very important, and I would like to ask this again. Please continue to pay attention to what it said day in day out, because if you don't pay attention, and we've been said and it's been said and it's been said, then you are not helping the people so that they have the most useful information in order to face this epidemic situation. Now, if the purpose is to deviate attention on what's useful so that all of us can take care of us together, working together harmonically between government and society without any kind of political agenda, and facing a situation that is rather technical in nature, then you are doing a poor service, because public health, it's based on how many tests are done, how many, where are the states being taken place, what's the extent, what's the contact these people have had contact with, and why is the president giving kisses and hugging. Well, from the technical standpoint, Mr. President has two connotations, and I'm talking about the integral or comprehensive management of an epidemic. So Mr. President is a person, and as a person we should respect him as a people, because we should respect their privacy right. Nobody needs to be harassing Mr. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador as a person. That's his privacy, and he has a right to privacy, even though he's a public figure. Number two, there's also a technical connotation that goes a little bit further than what's technical, but it reaches to the grounds of public health. Well, we need to take care of the head of the state as any other kind of strategic personnel, and it is our responsibility. But the mechanisms are not to make general recommendations so that they can land on the president. That has different kind of mechanisms. Unfortunately, Mr. President has great health, and even though he's over 60 years of age, that doesn't mean that he is a special risk individual. I'm going to tell you something that's quite pragmatic. It'll be a bit better for the president to get coronavirus, because he individually, as most of us, well, he will recover himself spontaneously, and he would be immune to this disease, and nobody would have concerns regarding him. Well, I'm not saying that everybody should run a test. The question was with the president because of his activities. So my concern is, if the president has been infected and he goes to high poverty areas, would he be able to spread the disease? Well, the strength of the president, it's a moral. strength. It's not a contagious strength. So if an individual can infect others, well, the president has the same chance of infecting someone else as you or myself, and you also go throughout the country and you're within society. So, Mr. President, it's not an infection point, right? He is not going to infect the masses, or the other way around, as I stated before, or the other way around. Well, our concern is because there are no hygiene measures. No, hey, just so that you don't get concerned, I would act very responsibly. I am going to continue to follow recommendations from physicians, from specialists regarding this. I'm going to follow the whole protocol that it's being applied. So, if needed, at its time needed, if I follow my physician's recommendations, then I'll take the test. But I would like to ask of you not to make this matter a political matter, because, well, I showcased the case from last night, and it is evident that there's an interest behind all of this, a political interest, and this does not help. I'd like for everyone that approached me at the airport yesterday, well, they should be saying today that that person did not die, because I was being harassed and I said, I'm going to strike interview wise. Why don't you wake up early tomorrow? But it seems that now it doesn't matter. They were talking about that they had the first person dead due to coronavirus. That's what they were saying yesterday. But they are not interested to follow up. They said, hey, aren't you going to send your condolences over to the family members? And that's what they were asking. So I kept silent. So I truly hope that they would be able to convey or follow up on this news, because I'm sure that those are the big media corporations, the most famous TV stations, right? So I did not really place the attention to it, but this shouldn't be done. You should act ethically, you should act responsibly. I understand the reason why they are angry. They are uncomfortable. And I know that changes are uncomfortable, and this is the uncomfortability that our changes are causing. More than anything, our fight against corruption. This is what has them mad as a hatter. Because, well, this is a very important matter, and we should truly address this matter responsibly. It's to love one another. I mean, how are you going to wish someone else to die just for political reasons? Where it's fraternity, where is humanitarianism? It cannot be that greed for money will make you a zombie, will turn you into a zombie, so that you would act against your neighbor, against other human beings. That's a disease. That's a disease worse than coronavirus. Even it's like when the Spaniards came and they were saying, "Hey, we have a disease. Have a disease that can only be cured with gold." That's what conquerors said. So is this what's going on here? no to greed. We should act with responsibility, with prudence. We should love one another. We should respect one another. We should not wish evil to anyone. I mean, what's the purpose of going to church on Sundays, going to temples, if we do not comply with the commandments? So, yeah, we've talked about hypocrisy. We should set aside hypocrisy. This is what I consider should be taught nowadays. And people should have enough trust on us because, well, we're not going to lie. We are going to continue to report regarding this topic. We had been doing so ever since 3 months ago, even more than other countries around the globe. We were given information on a daily basis. And we will continue to do so. And, well, we are going to continue to take all the necessary measures without hiding anything. And this is why we have decided to make scientists, to make physicians, well, our guiding lights. They would be directing us, and we should all help them. We should all help whenever the responsible parties, whenever the physicians make a calling and they ask for a certain kind of behavior. Well, we should listen to them, but we should listen to them only, not for a lower chamber representative that would make a press conference of regarding coronavirus, or a governor, or a political party leader, or even the president. If we have experts right here, so I've asked of them to act autonomously and with freedom. And that's the same thing that happens with the economical aspect of things. If the price of oil drops the way that it dropped, if our currency is losing value, well, the Bank of Mexico should act, and should act autonomously. We shouldn't get our hands dirty there. Everybody should do what they know how to do, right? And we should place a lot of faith. We should place a lot of enthusiasm that we are going to bring our country forward, our dear Mexico. We are going to face a lot of adversities. Yeah, we're going to face them, but the fourth transformation is going to take place. And I'm sorry, I had a second topic. I'm sorry, because this topic was ever since last week, and I know that we're going to talk about coronavirus later on, but there was a topic on the upper chamber that they were asking your government regarding the crisis that the carbon area of Coahuila with Altos Hornos of Mexico. There are people that have not collected for months, and they are calling for you to state a economical disaster there. But what the strategy that your government is going to take? Also, the tax authorities and the Ministry of Labor. What are you going to do regarding that area in Coahuila? Well, we are going to wait. This crisis happened precisely due to corruption. This is why we're having this crisis. It is due to corruption, because corruption is the evilest of evils, right? It's the one that has the highest impact. The corruption is, and that's what caused the crisis in Monclova. And we are on the lookout. But we are not going to act like people acted before when we were rescuing companies with people's money. We're not going to save private companies with the people's money. We're not going to have any more FOBAPROAS anymore because we need to drive the budget or manage the budget with responsibly. We cannot turn private debt into public debt. So, what are you going to do? Well, we are going to wait. We're going to see what happens. This is an open process that had its origin on corruption, mostly. They were privileged groups on the neoliberal period, and they had a lot of influences with corrupt politicians. And well, we had this kind of cases, right? But that's over. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, public officers. Well, 21 independent journals from the internet. Well, those are the ones that are now part of the staff of misinformation in Mexico. So, in that sense, Mr. President, I would like to give you some data. The people that are listening, I'm going to give you a report of the number of deaths worldwide. And journalists in Mexico don't do that. Tuberculosis, 3,014. Hepatitis B, 2,430. Pneumonia, 2,216 people dead. HIV or AIDS, 2,110. Malaria, 2,002. CGL losses, 1,644. And severe diarrhea, it calls young children, rotavirus 1,233, and the flu, obviously, in the administration of PAN, headed by Mr. Calderon. Well, it caused a economical disaster. Well, that's 1,229. Coronavirus, the vomit bug. Well, it kills children in poverty country. Typhoidea 396, cholera 392, meningitis 329, smallpox 247, rabies 162, yellow fever 82 people, and today coronavirus, the COVID 19, only 56 people have died around the world. So I'm talking about this, and I will tell you what are my sources regarding this. I will tell you all my sources. Echinococcus 53, dengue 50, hepatitis A 20, Ebola 53, SARS 32, MERS 23. So this figure was updated on March 29th of this year, and these are from the prevention centers, and these are numbers of the WHO. So, Mr. President, I see that the journalists that obtained millionaire resources thanks to public financing, being that COVID and 2019, it's a matter of the state and of public health. I don't know if your government is thinking that conferences that are being offered at 7 p.m., well, they should be offered through networks because it should inform everybody, and we should fight against the misinformation, and those are public spaces that belong to the state, either Televisa or TV Azteca, and that way people will be informed from A to C regarding what's going on. Well, I'll take your proposal into consideration, but that's not what we truly want. What's best is to persuade, right? As Mr. President Juarez said, well, that we should not flex our muscles. We should do everything through for our reason. We will continue to have our conferences at the early morning conference, just like this one, and we're going to have the one at 7 p.m. for coronavirus, and this is going to happen day in, day out, and well. A lot of people it's on the lookout of the night reports, and this truly helps to fight back misinformation because we should remain calm. We should not panic. We are going to face adversity. Mexico has withstood many calamities due to our culture. Our culture has protected us and has driven us forward. Thanks to our culture, we have moved forward and we have faced floodings and earthquakes, epidemics as well, poor administrations, corruption, all of those calamities due to our culture, our people. It's something extraordinary, something exceptional. So we are going to keep on moving forward, and this is just a matter of remaining calm to place our trust where it belongs, and we are not going to let the people down. And Mr. President, I have another question. What were the agreements that you reached with the bank yesterday that you met with them, and any advancements, if you could provide any information regarding that? And also, what's the route that immigrants are going to have, because immigrants are still concerned about the money that they send over to Mexico, because with that money coming into Mexico, we will be coming into a very important crisis. Well, I'd like to take the immigrants and the immigrants over there, because they have not stopped sending their contributions over to their family members here in Mexico. So they're still sending money back to Mexico. In January, there was an increase. Regarding January this year and January 2019. The amount of money that was sent from abroad increased by around 5%. And we are gathering information, and well, they continue to send money, and we really thank them for their support. In the banking national banking convention, I talked about commission charges on the money that it's been sent from abroad, and I highlighted that a financial institution is the one that is charging the less commissions for this, and that'll be Banorte. And I take advantage of this moment to inform this, because we ran a study. This was a study from the Consumers Ministry, and well, sometimes we show this on screen, but throughout the year it was the financial institution that behaved better, not only charging any fees, but also on what they are giving back to people in the currency exchange rate, from pesos to dollar, and vice versa. They do not punish people. Rather, they are properly paid. They pay properly for dollars. They pay properly for dollars in pesos. So, well, that was one of the points that were treated in the banking commission, and I also invited them to increase the banking infrastructure nationwide, because there are no financial institution branches. I was there in the Guerrero coast, and there are no branches there. Yeah, I was there in the coast of Guerrero. I was in Cuaji, And well, we are going to build, and in some other towns, we are also going to build branches of El Bienestar Bank. But I was in Jilapa in the coast of Guerrero. Well, they were asking me to invite financial institutions to place branches over there, and because they don't have branches in several towns. So I invited them. I was in the Acapulco convention and I asked financial institutions for them to broaden their infrastructure and that they should acquire a social dimension on the banking system. So they have the commitment. They are going to broaden their infrastructure, and they are also going, or rather, our commitment is to transfer resources so that they can spread all the well-being programs, and these financial institutions are going to help us by placing branches on communities that are a bit isolated, because we are not going to be able to disperse or spread these programs with the financial institution El Bienestar. El Banco Bienestar is going to have 2,800 branches nationwide. Nonetheless, we need around 10,000. That's the amount needed of branches in order to be able to have coverage nationwide, right? So we are falling behind in terms of infrastructure, and it's the same thing that it's going on with internet right now. Also on the coast of Guerrero in the Costa Chica, they only have internet on town halls. If you step out of the town hall, if you are on the road, on the highway, there's not internet anymore. You are about to get to Acapulco from San Marcos to Acapulco, and that's around 80 kilometers. Well, more than half of the highway, there's no internet. You cannot be talking on your phone because there's no service. There's no internet service either. So we need, or well, that's another program that it's moving forward. Internet for everyone. Well, I truly hope that in 2 years we are going to have the whole country communicating, right? We are going to have banking infrastructure so that people can receive help close to their community so that they don't need to commute for that long, and for them to have internet. We are always talking about technology. We're always talking about how there should be a leap towards technological development, and of course that's right. But what it's truly important is for us to have internet, for us to have means to communicate, right? And this is what I heard from one of the experts. I was talking about the importance of the digital era, but if we don't have communication, then if we don't have it, communication, because it's not business for investors, then we need to have intervention from the state, because the state has a social responsibility in order to guarantee that there's communication, in this case technological development. So well, whenever the COVID-19 topic ends, I'm sure that is going to be an economical decrease because some activities stopped right now and they were postponed to or rescheduled. So I've seen on social media mostly people that are on different states while they are asking because they are being harassed because they're saying that the support for youngsters, the support for elderly citizens, support for women, they say that they're going to be suspended. I know that that's not going to happen because it has been a constitutional amendment, but how is the government going to face that, being that the oil price dropped? Hey, well, social programs are going to be kept. Those kind of supports are completely legal and sacred. They have to do with justice. Even in the most adverse circumstances, we are going to keep providing support to the elderly, to people with disabilities, scholarships for students, the program called Sembrando Vida or Sitting Life, and Jóvenes Sembrando el Futuro, youngsters building the future, everything. So we're talking about around 500 billion pesos, and that comprehends free medication and public health care. So, in that sense, nothing will happen there. Besides that, well, I would like to remind you of the importance, the fact that the lower chamber passed a reform on the fourth article on the Constitution because it's now being stated as a right. Now, pension for the elderly citizen, it's a right. A pension for to people with disability, it's now a right. A scholarship for students, it is not a program. They are rights and they are elevated to the constitutional tier. And when it was approved, well, it states that the budget cannot be decreased for any of these programs, right? So I am only waiting for it to pass on the upper chamber so that it's approved, because the party that did not want to approve this reform, well, they can have a change of heart and they can vote in favor in the upper chamber. But also, if they don't vote on the Senate favoring this reform, the ones that voted, the parties that already voted on the upper chamber, if they behave the same way in the upper chamber, then they would have a majority. It will be two-thirds parts, and it will go to local legislatures. And there we only need 17 approvals, and we wouldn't have any issues regarding that, and this great reform would be approved, and this will be historical because it will be establishing in Mexico a state of well-being, precisely on the face of any crisis. Well, we will protect the poorest ones, the most vulnerable ones, the ones with most need, right? So we are not going to have any issues. So we are even looking at how we are going to be impacted due to the drop of oil prices. But on the other hand, people are going to receive benefits, right? Because the price of gas will drop. And this is very important for me to say. The popular economy or people's economy in the face of this circumstance, in the face of coronavirus that has generated the economic instability and the drop of oil prices, well, we can face this because being that the price of oil has dropped, well, also the price of gas drops, and we are importing 60% of our gas. Unfortunately, the gas that it's used in our country, well, this is what we do. So we should keep in mind that being that we did not build refineries, and they were saying that it was better to send to sell crude oil. Well, if we had refineries, then this wouldn't be affecting us. The drop of the price of oil wouldn't affect us. But being that we purchase gas, and we are purchasing it at a lower price, and we took the decision not only due to the IEF, that's a tax that the IEF, the tax cannot increase anymore, but rather it was a decision that we took upon ourselves. Well, Pemex is not going to increase the price of gas. It will behave according to the international price, and we do not establish any special tax in order to keep the price of gas that we used to have. If it drops, then it needs to drop. What Ricardo explained is that the gas stations owners or franchise owners of gas stations, people that render this service, well, they should also act responsibly, and they should not pocket the difference, right? They should not pocket the exceeding amount of their margins that they are achieving right now. Now that the gas price has dropped, because it need to be sold cheaper. So gas needs to be sold cheaper, and this should be shown in this upcoming few days, and it has to do on how the international market behaves. But we are not going to step over into the area. If it increases, that will remain as it was, or the other way around. No, if it could go up, it shouldn't even go up more than it had. If we're going to control gas prices to the upper to the down level, because that was my commitment. I said that gas prices were not going to increase, but right now it's not only not increasing, but it's rather decreasing, and we are living it as it is without any kind of intervention on our behalf, and this really helps economic people's economics. If we have problems due to the fact that the peso might drop its value, well, we that perhaps would make the percentage of that increase in relation to the GDP, then we would make an adjustment, but not to any social programs. We wouldn't be impacting the popular economy or the people's economy. We would rather adjust our belt. We would tighten our belt, but that'll be the government. The government will tighten its belt. It's not the other way around. How it used to be, we had a crisis and we asked the people to tighten up their belts while the government was still spending on public their public finances. So if necessary, well, not right now, but if it's necessary, if we would need to make an adjustment, we would certainly make an adjustment on the government, basically. So just one on one. So yeah, well, ladies first, and then to the right. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Shaila Rosagel. I work for La Crónica de Mexicali and Frontera Tijuana. Well, just to wrap up the idea on what my peer asked before, when would you consider to stop touring that the tours that you perform on the weekends to communities. So, under which scenario would you stop this? And Mr. President, there are business entities that think that there should be fiscal measures so that companies will continue to be able to provide jobs. Like other countries do, right? Is there any kind of a stimulus from the federal government, and how would you contribute towards companies so they can keep their personnel? And is there any kind of resources towards hospitals nationwide so that they can face this disease? Well, it's important to take this into account as well. You are going to say that, well, I am like that I repeat myself over and over, that I'm in loop, but I am convinced, I am a believer that Mexico's main problem used to be corruption. Nothing damaged Mexico more than dishonesty from leaders, from political leaders, right? And why am I saying this? Because even at the face of crisis, they would continue to steal, or they would rather take advantage of a crisis in order to keep on stealing. They declared a state of emergency, and they were purchasing things without any kind of bids, and they were purchasing things that were twice or thrice more expensive, right? So I would like Hugo to talk about this, what has to do with health, right? Because how we have traffickers talking about equipment for coronavirus, and well, they are deceivers. Why don't you talk about that? What do you talk about corruption? I just give me 1 second, and also, Hugo, I would like for you to report right here when is he going to ask me not to move, to remain still, when he's going to ask me to remain still, when he would recommend for me not to reach out to people, for me not to have contact with people, because he is the one that has the last word on it. He is the one that is going to tell me. So, or I mean, I don't know, but he's the one that is gonna tell me, not a so-called politician or any other kind of media, purchase media, as it used to be. Thank you, Mr. President. That's right. Epidemics, as any kind of unexpected phenomena that starts to cause panic. Well, it also starts to cause greed, right? And this is very well known. This happens all over the world. In Mexico, we had very clear examples, even a few years ago, where greed, it's a timely and opportunist greed that tries to make money not only from the health issue, but also fear, social fear. We have stated that fear is a human response. Our brains are programmed to be on a state of alert in the face of diversity. Human beings are programmed like that, also other animals, but human beings, that fear also infects, and that infects through different means, and one of those means is a public media, both formal or informal. And this is why it's not surprising that through different kind of media, through corporate media to social media to printed media, etc., well, we start to there's several messages are being seeded. I'd like to tell you that this is not only an appreciation in our epidemic and sanitary intelligence unit. Well, we monitor media, and this is based on a methodology that the whole world has ever since 20 years ago, that it's called epidemic intelligence. And the messages and hearsay, well, they can be a very useful instrument in order to have early alert stages in terms of health phenomena, but also social phenomena that it's linked to health, right? So the topic of the different commercial adventures or business ventures, well, we are starting to see this now, and there are fields that are particularly desirable for whoever wants to make money. IT platforms, mobile apps, fast communication mechanisms, etc. Diagnosis. This is why everybody's saying, hey, everybody needs to run a test. When are you going to run tests like in Korea? Because they run 200,000 tests when there is no technical foundation. And on the social media, there is a video going around where the protection of health protection minister of Australia, a highly qualified individual, he calmly saying what Australia is doing in terms of diagnosis, and it's the same thing that we're doing here in Mexico. If there is a reason for that individual to run a test, to have a test done, then he would do so. And also temperature monitoring, that also it's a good business. This is what I stated last night. The thermal distance cameras, this kind of equipments are highly questionable in terms of how useful they are in order to perform the filter, to be able to screen people that have symptoms, and how useful it is as a mechanism that is going to reduce the transmission. And equipment such as this can take a cost of $35,000, which is a fortune if we compare this to a mechanical fan in order to provide respiratory assistance for someone in the ICU. It has a similar price, right? So we should assimilate all of this. Also, infrared thermometers, whenever we stated the measures of responsible filter for the educational national system, we are not talking about having massive purchases of thermometers, because that would be senseless. And answer to answer the question, when would you cancel tours? Well, that also has a technical analysis that does not depend on the political connotation of touring. Also, public manifestations, the citizens, if they are organized and they intend to convey their claims and their manifestations, which is a constitutional right to free expression. Well, all of that has a technical baseline, right? Obviously, technical questions are going to be identified day in, day out, according to the situation. And well, right now we are on stage number one, and well, we are getting to the turning point. We call that the turning point, and this is the point where the amount of cases per day can increase faster, and we are going to explain that in a chart today at night or tomorrow, in order for us to have a broader audience. And at a certain point in time, massive concentrations of a smaller size, well, they could be canceled, or higher concentrations of a higher size could be fragmented, and that'll be enough to reach our purpose. Mr. President, regarding the fiscal stimuli for companies, they are not being taken into consideration right now. I think that a good stimuli would be decreasing prices of fuels. A great support for them would be not to increase taxes. And that we are going to let you know about the energy development plan. And that's say that at the end of this week, we are going to have all investment projects. I've been having meetings with entrepreneurs and businessmen, and they are letting me know about their investments. I held a conversation over the phone with Alberto Valleres, and he informed me about new investments both in mining and oil. And also, Carlos Slim told me that just tomorrow he's going to make an investment announcement for Mexico. So we are doing our work. Well, I wanted to ask you about energy projects. How are you prioritizing renewable energy and renewable energies such as wind energy? And what are you asking entrepreneurs in these renewable energy projects? Well, yeah, there are projects for wind power in the package of projects of the energy sector. So the public investment is considerable for the energy sector, both public and privately. But if it's not this weekend, then it's going to be at the beginning of next week, and this is when we're going to let you know all about the plan. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Minister. My name is Eduardo Esquivel Ancona from Análisis Económico of the Grupo SDP. So I would like to ask you, Mr. President, I have been observing that the expansion of the coronavirus epidemic has shown or that Mexico, as the previous administration stated, that Mexico was a great exporting country. But I'd say that that's not true because there are production lines that have come to a halt, mostly for electronic kind of equipments, that due to, well, they were saying that Mexico was the main exporter of TVs, but if we look at the numbers of these TVs, well, only 8% have a national assembly. So everything else came from China, Korea, and being that the plants are at a halt due to the epidemic, it has shown that Mexico, well, we're not as good exporters as we thought of. And some other thing that this crisis has shown, this health crisis has shown, is that, well, we still have a lot of counterfeit of products that come from China. We know that there is a mafia. It's a mafia that manages the informal economy, and they are selling this kind of products. So my question specifically would be: wouldn't you think that this is a moment of time to open an opportunity right here now, being that the new treaty has been ratified? And the three countries that are in this commercial agreement, well, you should get into an agreement once again so that you can think about co-investments so that we won't depend on imports from China, but rather private Mexican companies should have an alliance with US companies or Canadian companies or even with Chinese companies, and so that we can produce right here and that we can have a technological development, and that would ratify that commitment, and that we should have a better care on Mexican customs in order to stop all that counterfeit that is hurting our economy. And on the other hand, it is also important to understand that there's a crisis on worldwide tourism due to the expansion of the disease. So perhaps not provide fiscal stimuli because, well, I agree with you, sir, that wouldn't be of any help. We need to find different ways of fostering investment. We should foster investments in different ways. We should not waive any taxes, but rather we should provide security. But tourism is going to fall down. It's falling down across the globe. Nobody wants to travel anymore. But once this emergency is over, do you think about any promotion programs for Mexico? Do you think that we can have promotion programs so that we can drive this whole industry forward with the Mayan train still be built? I mean, those are my questions. Well, we will continue to assess the behavior of this economical crisis, this worldwide financial crisis caused by coronavirus and due to the drop of oil prices. Well, we will continue to be observant, and we're going to find a way to avoid this to have an impact on us, but rather on the contrary, we would like to be able to to press forward in a circumstance such as this one. We have several advantages. One of our advantages, precisely, it's the fact that in the three countries, this free treaty agreement has been approved, right? So now the government, the U.S. government, and the Canadian government, well, they are willing so that all three countries can initiate the execution of the treaty, that we can go into its functioning so that the agreement can start to work as soon as possible. This was going to under normal circumstances, this was going to take a bit more time, but now we're talking that it will be starting in the month of June. So we expect this new treaty to start working by June. I am asking the Minister of External Relations and the Minister of Economy so that we can reach an agreement, and we should have this new treaty working as soon as possible in our country. This can match what you are stating. We can have joint investments, cooperation, so to call it, towards development. And the same thing goes for financial and economical stability. Yesterday, the U.S. government made the decision of decreasing rates, interest rates, and all of this in order to stabilize the market. This helps us quite a lot because, well, they can make this intervention. They have enough resources to do so, and they help to stabilize the market internationally, and thus they help us particularly. In the case of Mexico, well, what has to do with currency and also the stock market, that kind of self intervention truly helps. The intervention from the U.S. government truly helps. So I think that the decision that they made was okay, and that decision was made ever since yesterday, ever since Sunday, and they have been announcing this, but they are dwelling in this kind of measures a bit more. So all of this is going to help us to not be affected that much. And also, we might be able to take or drive the country forward in this circumstance economic wise. I would like to say that in the particular case of tourism, according to the information that I've got, well, we continue to have a tourist inflow. We haven't had any drop on those numbers yet. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because we also have advantages regarding all of this. I would not like to mention anything yet. I would just like to let you know that yesterday, when I was in Acapulco, the hotel occupation was 94%. 94% occupation this past weekend, this long weekend. So occupation was doing great, at least in the case of Acapulco, and I certainly expect it to continue to behave that way. I'm talking about tourism, and also, well, the decision of the U.S. is going to help us with the currency exchange rate. It helps us. I do think that it's going to help us. I would truly think that it will help us bring the dollar price down. Okay, thank you very much. And I'll take that question, and then I'll take that other question. Yeah, I'll take another question from her. Okay, hello, my name is Juan Hernandez from Grupo Canton, and I will only talk about this, just to make this message clear. So, this coronavirus crisis is not going to affect the economic stability of the country, and I was only going to ask that question, but I'm going to take advantage and ask another one. Now, talking about protocols, I don't know if you already have taken into consideration if we are going to go through the coronavirus test. I'm talking about the presidential security. I don't know if we journalists or reporters are going to undergo this kind of test. Well, I desire from the deepest area of my soul for coronavirus not to have an impact on our economy. I wish that you're going to tell me that I'm an idealist, a romantic, a dreamer. You're going to say that I'm a Quixote, that I'm perhaps a little bit irresponsible. But you know what our some of our adversaries would like? They would like for me to say otherwise. Imagine how those 8 columns would look like, right? That will be the headline for you, right? We are going to be affected. The economy is going to be affected by coronavirus. Of course, I don't desire any of that. What I desire is for dreams to turn into reality, and I have a dream. And my dream is that our people is not going to suffer. And that's what I want to turn into a reality. I would like for our people to be happy, 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 happy. And in your case, well, I think that it's the same protocol. Just to make this clear, Dr. Hugo, well, it can be today at 7 p.m. It can be tomorrow when he's going to be here tomorrow. Well, he's going to tell all Mexicans, including the president, well, he's going to tell you to stay at your homes and not to go out, don't meet anyone, don't go to public events. Well, whatever the recommendation might be, he will be stating it at its moment in a timely fashion, right? So, about 2 months ago, whenever we have been dealing with this topic, well, Hugo has always been saying we're going to reach a turning point, right? We're going to have an impact due to this, but it's a process and it has stages. So we should not wear ourselves out, because whenever we need to take this kind of measures, well, we should be prepped and we should be strong, right? Because if we start before time to do all of this without complying with protocols, then if we exaggerate, well, then we are going to have a higher impact by the epidemic. So let's follow our recommendations. And if in any other country they are acting in a different way, well, every country has its own circumstance. That's why. Right here in Mexico, we have decided for scientists, for specialists, the ones to guide us, because Mexico's president, it's no a know-it-all. It's not a jack of all trades. My experience is precisely based on doing what I need to do and not to get myself into matters that have to do with specialists, that have to do with technicians. Of course, at its time, well, the decision is made by the head of the state. And it's important for me to say this. These are political decisions. One of the problems that we suffered from during the neoliberal period is that the economy was placed on the highest tier, and everything else was placed underneath it. And no, no, it's politics. Is that politics the interest of the nation? Yes, but politics, not so-called politics. Politics, it's a noble job. It's very clean. It's so clean that not even the dirtiest politicians have been able to stain or politics. Politics, it's a job. So we should not talk about science. So we are going to make specialists our guys, and they should show us the way. And we should also adhere to the WHO, to the World Health Organization, and we should adhere to the map that they post and that they update every day. Why is not that map on screen right now? Well, this map, it's not done by us. There it is. You can see our country on the map. And I'd like to repeat myself. That doesn't mean that it's not going to turn red on the map, but it's not red yet. So it's like the thing that happened yesterday. They were looking for the first death by coronavirus. I don't desire anyone's passing away. It might happen, but it's not my desire. But this is an epidemic, a pandemic, rather. Well, it might so happen that we turn red, but we should be prepped and we should not get ahead of ourselves. Okay, so hello, good morning, Mr. President. My name is Nuria Loberto from Venezuela to Informa. Well, I would just like to make a comment before that anything. Would you stop touring on stage number 2, or would you rather wait to stage number 3? So just to be clear on that. So what is Dr. Hugo Lopez Gatel referring to? Well, it might be ever since stage number 2. So whenever he tells me to. So why don't you step forward, and I will do so under any circumstance if he tells me to do so? Well, it's a little bit more complex than just boiling it down to stage one, two, or three. So I would just like to explain this, and I will explain this every night. And tomorrow I will use drawings for that. But the idea of the measurements for epidemic control, well, they have two big types. One of them it's called contention, and the other one it's mitigation. Right? Contention, it's to suppose that we can place a halt, that we can place a barrier, perhaps a mechanical barrier for infection. This idea has never been discarded, and we have been executing this. We have three elements. We detect cases, we isolate those cases, and we verify diagnosis, and we study their contacts. This is a contention component, right? So the way that you follow up on contacts, and if you isolate those contacts, and if they don't have any symptoms, they can just be left free, then that's a contention measure. This is useful, and it's used on the early stages of an epidemic, and it has advancements and advantages, but also great limits. To have contentions on entry ports, and by this I'm calling about airports, I'm talking about closing airports, closing marine ports, closing flights, closing the border. Well, that has never been considered a useful containment mechanism. It has no technical background because the flow there, it's massive. There's a massive flow there, so whenever we move to a massive phenomena, then we have thousands upon thousands of people mobilizing. So at that point in time, what we need to take into consideration is mitigation measures, and that is reducing the speed of infection. So you don't have the possibility, and scientific wise, there is no hope to absolutely limit infection, but rather to reduce it, right? So, on individual terms, it means one thing: we would like nobody to get ill. Nobody would like to get ill. Nobody would like your neighbor to get ill, not you, not us. And this is very important. And this talks about the integrity of an individual. But the measures of mitigation, its main purpose is for us not to have many cases at the same time, so we don't saturate healthcare units, right? That doesn't mean that, and I would like to be perfectly clear on this, when you scientifically recognize that you are going to have cases, that you wish for those cases to exist. We don't want, ideally, to have any case, but you cannot cover the sun with your hand and pretend there's no epidemic going on, right? So this should be clear, and we have said this ever since the beginning. Mitigation measures, what they would like to do is to reduce the speed of infection. And as we said this, there's an ideal moment to apply this, and this will be explained with the contagion curve tomorrow. But we need to take into consideration undesirable effects of mitigation measures, which is the affectation that we have towards society by suspending economy and the economy of the most vulnerable ones. And there is an amount of measures, and we have been putting them into practice, that play a crucial role. So I'll just wrap this up with a quote: not everything means to cancel events, but my question is towards the president of the press, to Mr. President: when would he stop touring? Because this is a matter that concerns all Mexicans. The Mr. President is a number one public figure nationwide, and well, when would you stop touring? Well, whenever he'll tell me. I don't know if I'm telling you this right, but he'll tell me. Well, so we're gonna wait. Yeah, we're gonna wait, and he's going to tell me. He's going to tell me when, according to the stage that is being taken into consideration, because we have a whole plan. Well, he's going to let me know, hey, you know what, it's not convenient for you to meet with a lot of people, right? Or perhaps you shouldn't go to this or that event, nor give a handshake or a hug or a kiss, nothing like that. Well, he's the one that's gonna tell me when, right? Of course, I am going to be in constant communication with people, because this well, we wouldn't be holding hands and right next to each other like we are right now. But in the case that we have a more complex situation, then I would come here. I would come here. You would be at a distance, perhaps remotely, and well, we will be talking to each other and we will be communicating with the people nonetheless. But I would listen. I would listen to the recommendations that I'm given by specialists. So, what I cannot do, because, well, figure this out for me, if I come here as suggested by some with a mouth cover, then I mean, if you see the president wearing a mouth cover, then imagine how people are going to be like, right? So I rather need to raise people's spirits up. I need to show that there's security, and this is not lying, but rather this is to act according to reality, according to adherence to truth, right? But not to exaggerate, right? Perhaps any citizen can wear a mask, but not the president, right? Because, well, it's just like the questions that you've stated. If I say, hey, the economy is doing very bad, then if I say, well, with the coronavirus, the economy will plummet, well, imagine what would happen. First and foremost, well, it is not true. And second of all, our adversaries, because our adversaries are very angry right now. Well, the thing is that corruption used to be a lot. So this is why they're angry. They did not want it to stop stealing, and they're still there, resistant. So I need to act in such fashion. This is part of my job. So, whenever the doctor advises me to stop, I would comply. If he tells me, hey, you need to take the test, because why should I have a test done if the doctor is recommending us not to fall into that, right? So, if I were to take the test, then I am conveying the message that people should go to labs and they should saturate those labs. That's what I would be saying, the analysis labs. And what do we earn from all of that? We earn squat, right? On the contrary. So, I would like to ask all of you to place your trust on the fact that we will be reporting, and what's best about everything, it's information, and we have an objective and a professional information. We won't be hiding anything. We won't be manipulating anything. We will be speaking with the truth, and that's what's best. Mr. President, I have two questions for you. One of them is directed to the General Attorney. With all of your the head, rather the Ministry the Consumer of the Consumer Department. So, I mean, my question is regarding panic purchasing. There is no toilet paper. There is not enough hand soap. So, what would you tell the public regarding this panic purchasing, because this is shown through social media, and what it generates, of course, it's much more panic. And on the other hand, because, well, life moves forward, so on the other hand, so El Mencho, the leader of the Nueva Generación Jalisco Carcel, that's the DEA's objective number one. Do you have any information regarding this? What's being done with the DEA alongside the Mexican authorities? If there is any strategy in order to stop this criminal cartel? So those are my two questions, and I like to thank you for your answers beforehand. So regarding the first question, well, obviously, making this kind of exaggerated purchases, it's not helping us at all. Not at all, because it can produce inflation. It can produce a lack of supply. So no, there's no need for that. There's no need for panic purchases. There's no need. We have enough supplies, right? We won't have scarcity. So yeah, please, everybody should remain calm. We should help each other out. We should just consume what we need, or rather, how can we do this on different circumstances, or under normal circumstances? We should make our purchases under normal circumstances. We should not have any panic shopping, because it's not helping us and it's not helping others either, right? So no, 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 no. We should all be aware, and we should all raise awareness. I have a lot of faith on our people. I have a lot of faith on Mexico's people, right? So imagine the what Mexicans did. I mean, we made a change in order to start another transformation. So we set aside all the people that felt that they owned Mexico, and we said, let's stop with the corruption. And this is what the Mexico's people did, right? They stopped corruption, and they did so under difficult circumstances, on earthquakes, and well, the solidarity of our people is always out there. So we should all be aware. We should all raise awareness, and that's it. And information. We should have information. We have orientation. We should have awareness, and people are going to help us out. Actually, people do help, and people do help every time. All of you help us to face misinformation and hearsay, because well, it works for that, right? So people should help us out. We should not have this kind of exaggerated purchases. And now, talking about the fight against criminals, well, we're going to have a report on that next Monday, 8 days from now, and we are going to have a report in the terms of Mexican security and all of that, because I would like to state that we are going to move forward, and that we are moving forward for the better, and we are going to prove that step by step. We have been able to stop or decrease the growth of homicides, grand theft auto, and other crimes. We have seen a decrease on criminal rates nationwide, but we are going to prove it with data. But that'll be next Monday. The whole board of security is going to show that. But answer me that question. I already did. But we want to come back next Monday. Next Monday, we're going to have the whole security board, and we are going to talk about this actions, about the actions that are being carried out. Okay, well, we're going to see each other tomorrow. And today, please be a part of a conference at 7. And well, we are going to keep in touch tomorrow. Tomorrow, All right, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Okay, well, today the people that are that are performing the census, well, they will be coming here because I live here, right? So at 10, they will come here and ask me questions for the census. So I need to be here because people from INEGI are going to be here with me. So I'll answer all of your questions tomorrow. Hey, so he has not participated a lot. So, okay. And this is Interpreter. It was my pleasure to have interpreted for you today. We are going to go over the coronavirus report at 7 p.m. UTC minus 6 Mexico City Standard Time. We'll see each other back then and tomorrow. Thank you for listening in. Have a great day. Thank you very much.